So I thought that I would just film this most requested client look, which is just a gold and brown cut crease, nice and glowing and bronze skin. Starting off, I'm taking the Anastasia Beverly Hills Dip Brow Pomade in the shade dark brown. I like to start off the brows by sort of outlining the underneath and then dragging the tail of the brow out a little bit, and then I outline the top of the brow, and then I sort of use what's left on my brush at the front of the brow just so it's not so harsh, and run the product all through the brow. And I used a clear brow gel to brush the hairs upwards and set them in place. And I used the Tarte Shape Tape Concealer to carve out underneath the eyebrow, and I used a 144 Zoeva brush, and I just dragged the product down the eyelid to use as a base, and then I'm just buffing it in with a smaller concealer brush and setting it with a bit of translucent powder. And I only use a small amount of translucent powder just so the eyeshadows have something to stick onto. And I also just carved out the top of the eyebrow as well, which I find just shapes them really nicely. Then I'm using the Anastasia Beverly Hills Soft Glam palette for this look. I firstly took the shade Burnt Orange just on a big fluffy blending brush. This is the Luxe Crease brush from Zoeva, which is my favourite blending brush. And I'm just using circular motions to work that colour all through the crease. I then used the shade Sienna, which is just a darker warm brown shade, and I used a Zoeva Soft Definer brush, which is also another favourite. And I concentrated this colour more in the outer corner and took it through the crease just below that first shadow. Then use the shade Orange Soda just to sort of blend everything out a little bit. And using the shade Mulberry, I think it is, I just use that to darken up the outer corners and took that through the crease as well. I then took the shade Cypress Umber, which is just a darker brown, and I used a smaller brush to just apply this to the outer corners and darken it up. I then took a bit more of the shade Sienna and used that to sort of diffuse that darker brown shade a little bit more, and then just use my blending brush to blend everything out a little bit more, make sure it's all blended seamlessly. I used the Stila liquid eyeshadow in the shade Starlight, which is just a nice light gold, and I just used that to cut the crease, and I used a small flat concealer brush to do this. While it was wet as well, I just blended out the outer corner with a little bit of that Cypress Umber shade. Then I used the NYX pigment in the shade Almond, which is just like a nice bronzy gold, and I put that over the liquid eyeshadow. Then I used the Stila Stay All Day liquid eyeliner just to do a bit of a wing. I like to line the lash line first, and then I let my client to look forward so I can see exactly where the wing is going. Moving on to the face, I'm using the Too Faced Hangover Primer to prime the face, which is just nice and hydrating. And I'm just using a stippling brush and applying that all over the face. Then I used a little bit of the Hourglass Mineral Veil Primer and just put that on the nose, forehead and cheeks just to smooth out the pores a little bit. I took the MAC Strobe Cream, which just adds a little bit of a nice glow to the face, so I mainly applied that on the cheeks and a little bit on the forehead and chin. For foundation, I'm taking the NARS Radiant Longwear Foundation, and this was in the shade Punjab. And I added in a pump of the Marc Jacobs Gel Highlighter just to make the foundation a little bit glowier. I applied this with a brush onto the face and then used a beauty sponge to blend it in. And I think this was just a Chi Chi one. They're really good and inexpensive. Used a brush to sort of carve around that eyebrows, and then used a smaller little buffing brush to blend it in around her eyebrows and nose. Then took the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer in the shade Vanilla, and I applied it under the eyes, forehead, down the nose and on the chin. Just using a little concealer brush to apply this, and again blending it in with the same beauty sponge. And just use that smaller brush to blend it in around the eyes and nose. I then use the Too Faced Born This Way translucent powder and put that under the eyes and anywhere else we put the concealer, just to make sure that it doesn't crease. I use the Benefit Hoola bronzer to contour and just carved out the cheeks. I don't take the contour too low as well, just because I find that can sort of drag the face down a little bit, so I like to keep it nice and high. And I took this around the forehead as well. I then took this MAC bronzing powder in Refined Golden just to add a bit of a warm glow. I then used the NARS blush in the shade Taj Mahal. So intense, but you just use a little bit of it and it looks so stunning. So I just applied that to the apples of the cheeks and sort of blended it upwards to lift the cheeks up a little bit. For highlighter, I'm taking my all-time favorite MAC Extra Dimension Skin Finish in the shade Whisper of Guilt, which just gives a really nice golden glow. And I always just spray my brush with a bit of Fix Plus, which I find just helps to intensify the highlight. Applying this to all the high points, so the cheeks, forehead, down the nose, tip of the nose and Cupid's bow. For underneath the eyes, I basically use the shades that we use on the eyelids. So I started off with the shade Sienna, and then I used that darker brown shade to apply right to the lash line, and then blended everything out with the shade Burnt Orange. I then just highlighted the inner corners and brow bone using the MAC pigment in Vanilla. Then just applied some mascara and lashes, and these were Model Rock eyelashes. For the lips, I used the Jeffree Star liquid lipstick in the shade Mannequin, which is a nice pinky brown nude. And over top, I used a MAC lip gloss in the shade Lust, and this lip gloss is super glossy, I love it. To finish off the face, I took the Urban Decay All Nighter setting spray and set the face. And that is the final look. Thanks for watching.